My name is Audury Moore. I graduated from Cherry Hill East in 1974. At that time, Cherry Hill was rapidly growing, so I started at Cherry Hill West on split sessions, and that was for the freshman year. Sophomore year, Cherry Hill East opened. So, a little fun fact, I was in the very first graduating class of Cherry Hill East, 1974. One of the first things that come to mind would be my family. I grew up with a very close family. They migrated from South Carolina. My aunt was the first one to come. She worked in Haddonfield at a, a home. She worked in a home for a family. This was 80 years ago. And she wanted her family to come up. So that's how it all started with Haddonfield. She came to Haddonfield, worked in a very large home on Shoes Landing Road, and wanted her brother to come up and his family. My father and mother would happen to be one of those that came along. I went to college in Baltimore. I went to HBCU. That's one of the historically black colleges and universities. I went to Morgan State University.
Morgan State?
Yes, Morgan, Morgan, right in Baltimore. That's near Johns Hopkins. It's near Towson. You might have heard of Towson, Loyola of Baltimore. I went to Loyola for a class. I was offered a scholarship in ceramics. So I did that in the evening, probably for a semester or two. It's funny how you can't always remember exactly what was going on because you kind of took it for granted. Oh, okay, I can just take this class they offered me. The term HBCU is because of there's like 106 historically black colleges and universities. And these were all built before 1964 in order to be qualified for that status. So it was a new experience for me because, look, I went to Cherry Hill East, right? But that's one reason why I decided to go to Baltimore, HBCU, Morgan State University, because I wanted to be around some of the black people and experience more friends. Like I said, we only had a handful of friends. There, I was in a dorm. My roommate was from Berlin, New Jersey, so they match you up with someone that fits. Had friends from Lawnside, and then of course, so the HBCU experience was great for me, even though it just seems kind of natural that I just went right in from that transition, going to Cherry Hill East where you have a handful of black students, and then going to a totally different setting at HBCU. But it was fine. Of course, we had concerts, and I was into the arts and the football games, and just had a great time. When I think about life in general, growing up, I automatically go back to the small section of Cherry Hill, Batesville, right next to Haddonfield. So actually, the two were, to me, almost the same because, well, for one thing, Batesville was more like the term, it takes a village. At that time, families were so important and interconnected. We could go outside and play all day. It was just that we knew we would be well taken care of because there was going to be a neighbor somewhere that was going to, be there to help. But we didn't really have to worry about danger then. We could stay out, like I said, just play all day. And it just built a strong sense of sisterhood and brotherhood that lasts until this day. Jump rope, ride your bike. Now, okay, so I think about Batesville, but then I think about the summers were the best. of course, for kids. We would travel to South Carolina to visit my mother's family. But the other part I remember is Haddonfield, going to Mount Well Pool. I don't know if any of you have heard about Mount Well Pool, but it was the greatest. And I took the lessons there, the Red Cross swim lessons. It started my love for water. I love to swim now, go to beaches, state parks, lakes. If there's anything involving water, kind of always go back to, oh, I still love to swim. And I know where I learned to swim, Mount Well Pool. It was a county park then, Camden County Park. So we had a broad arrangement, I guess you could say, of people coming. They came from everywhere. Lawnside, Haddonfield, Cherry Hill, as far as I know, because we could walk there. So everyone loved Mount Well Pool in Batesville. We could walk there, or parents would pick us up usually, and it was just great. And of course, the other part would be going to church in Haddonfield. My uncle was the minister most of my young days, and because he was the minister for 25 years, Reverend Dix. He was actually the minister prior to the minister that's there now, Reverend Talton. And he followed the other Reverend Talton, so he was right in the middle. There was Reverend Talton, the grandfather, Reverend Dix, and now Reverend Talton, the grandson. So I think about the church life. I also think about, I had relatives that lived right in Haddonfield. I had an aunt, my mother's older sister. When the family would come up, I guess they liked where we were, and she moved up here, my mother's oldest sister. She had children, and her two youngest children graduated from this high school. And that's one of the ones that I would play with. Now, what would we do? We would walk. She lived on Powder Street. You know where Powder Street is? She lived at the last house on the corner from the baseball field. So, of course, we would walk down to the baseball field, get those snow cones, watch the game, and that was just the greatest. So Haddonfield, as you see, was just about as important as where I grew up. I went to school in Cherry Hill, but a lot of times the other activities centered around going to Haddonfield. We were so close. It was just neck and neck. We sit right next to each other. So with friends, as we got older, like after playing in the streets, like I said, riding bikes, and coming up into teenage years, we would walk up Haddonfield. Then they had a Woolworths. The Woolworths was, just get anything you want, more or less, anything you need. They even had a little ice cream stand, more or less. You could sit there and get a sundae. All the stores now that are there weren't there then. And Haddonfield it's just blossomed. I'm not going to say it has changed so much because it's still a very nice, quaint town. One of my favorite stores, it actually was a deli, was going with my friends to the deli, Frank's Deli. It was right across from where the Acme is now. It's the pizza shop now. But Frank's had the best hoagies, just a little, maybe two or three of us at the most, because like I said, it was a very small town where I was from. And Haddonfield, we didn't have hardly any black friends from Haddonfield other than my cousins. So the deli, just being a kid, just enjoying. We could laugh and play, eat our sandwiches, the best hoagies, and go on back up down the hill, more or less. And we were home, matter of a couple minutes. So Batesville, Cherry Hill, for the black community, it just had that connection, because a lot of times the families were in both areas, like mine. They were in Batesville, some were in Haddonfield. I grew up at a time where civil rights was just, it was ending, so I was kind of naive to what was really going on. But when I think back about it, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize all this was going on. But what really hit me was, and I hate to say it still now because it was a scary thing, the assassinations of the presidents, Martin Luther King, JFK, his brother, Robert Kennedy. The TV would just stop. They would have music. It just seemed like the whole weekend, or it was just very memorable, of course, but it was frightening as a young child. I was probably about 12, maybe not even quite 12, maybe 10. Sunday dinner was a, more of an event than the other days of the week, but of course it was after church. So after church, my mother had already halfway prepared dinner, and we would have a bigger meal. We also had a bigger meal for breakfast. Sunday was just a special day. So we had a big breakfast. We always had a bigger dinner. And then one of the big parts about Sunday after dinner, my cousins would come. And they would play. And it was always a sad thing when they were leaving. They wanted to stay and watch Lassie. And it was just like the greatest. Of course, for dinner, I guess what you would say more or less a soul food menu. Fried chicken, potato salad. Of course, the vegetables. We were big on vegetables because my father had a garden. So we always had plenty of vegetables, collard greens, string beans, in the summer, corn on the cob. Since they were from the South, my father's hobby was to come in after work, go work in the garden. So in the summer, we could just go outside and pick, some corn, go have that for lunch, some corn and tomatoes or whatever we wanted. So that's just the way it was back then. He had a big garden. Batesville was a small area now, so we didn't have a whole lot of friends. We had some, we played, but as far as being friends, yeah. But as you get older, you notice which ones really stick. You have a few. I had Sonia, and I was the twin. So between my twin sister, Juanita, that was the one that went to Howard, and then I had a good friend, Sonia. She eventually moved close to where you are now. But she's not there now. But when she first married and had her son, she lived right there on Ellis Street. I see some changes, and then I see some similarities. The changes is that it's just gotten a little bit more popular. Before, it was like, I guess you would say, one of the best hidden secrets. From the Quaker background, with the Quaker background, they definitely was just a serene place, I would say, to live. So now it's still very nice. It still never had any problems. I don't have any bad memories with Haddonfield. So it hasn't changed a whole lot, but it's just, and the business area is just more crowded. Yeah. I still like to walk down here and shop a little bit every now and then, or get a slice of pizza or something. It's not a lot different, which is hard to preserve that, but some kind of ways they seem to be able to maintain that quaintness. Okay. Now, I can only tell you as far as much as I know. If I ask my older cousins, I have an older sister, a lot of us almost know about the same. Now, as far as we know, the story goes, my Aunt Mabel came up here to work. Well, we know she worked because we even been to that house. She worked at it's a big house almost on the corner of Kings Highway and Shoes Landing Road. If you look to the, you can see, I can see the house from that corner. She came as a domestic worker, and I would say that her main responsibility was the cook. Because when we would go visit her, she'd have on her uniform, and she'd always be in the kitchen. Now, she and she actually lived there. I don't know if I mentioned that. She lived on the premises. It was, like I said, it was a big house. All the help lived on the third floor. According to my uncle, at that time, Haddonfield was a very, and still is, a well-to-do town, but they had chauffeurs, that everybody had maids, and she was one of the maids. She wanted her brother to come up from South Carolina to live a better life and for her nephews to be safer. And so she brought a house on Crescent Road. And even though she didn't live there, she wanted them to come. She had the biggest bedroom. No one went in Aunt Mabel's bedroom. But she always stayed in Haddonfield until she retired. And when she got too old to work, then she came to the home. And then we built another house next door. So like I said, family was always that bonding unit. So when we came from the South, my Aunt Mabel wanted us to come up. So little by little, this was around World War II. This is how long it goes. My oldest sister was born around that time because she's like 10 years older than me. She came up, she was a baby with my mother, and my father wasn't even here yet. He was away at war, but they wanted her to come too. So when he got out of the war, she was already up here. And so a lot of brothers, if they wanted to come and, I guess, reestablish themselves, it was a big house, especially back then. My older sister says that now. Can you imagine our grandmother coming and grandfather coming from South Carolina, Aiken, South Carolina, where the houses were really small, to this big house that my aunt had for them to live if they wanted to? So we're grateful for that, or else who knows, where we would have been. Probably still in South Carolina, which South Carolina I don't have a problem with. I've traveled to Myrtle Beach, all those little places big places down there. Still, and we used to love to travel to South Carolina. Like I said, my mother's family stayed down there. A few of them liked it when they came up here, and they moved up here. My oldest, like I said, had a cousin where we used to go to the baseball field and all. My father and Reverend Dix were, I would say, more or less the best buddies. They, even during the time that Reverend Dix was the minister, my father was the deacon, and then he became the head of the deacon board. So they were very, very close. They even worked at the same place. My father worked at Sears and Roebuck, first in Camden, and then when they moved to Morristown. My Uncle Jay, we call him Uncle Jay, the minister, Reverend J.B. Dix, he worked at Sears also. So they were brothers, and they were brothers. There's no way that they were going to be separated. So in turn, my Uncle J.B., the minister, was almost like a second father to me. Even though he was the minister, he would pick us up to go to choir rehearsal, probably even Sunday school, because that was going to be a must every week. As far as my mother was concerned, and my father, we were going to go to church, especially Sunday school, and on those Sundays that we had to sing in the choir, we went to church. You love it when you go out and you see your students working somewhere. Maybe they're policemen now. We went to one of the concerts at Camden County Park, the outdoor park, and the guy on the lot was one of the ex-students, hey, I could get in the parking lot. So you just love to see them working and thriving.
Always be proud of what you've overcome, and always be proud of all the battles you've won, and always be proud of all of your darkest days, the tears you held back when you walked away, and always be proud of your mom and your dad, and whatever affair that they once had. Always be proud of your very first kiss, and always be proud of every friend that you miss. Always